Hey guys, alright, we are back with Potential History. This time we're taking a break from the tank memes and we're moving on to a ship meme. The Yamato, the right ship for the wrong war. So yeah, we're gonna learn about the biggest battleship I think ever created. Is it still the biggest battleship ever created? I know at least in World War II it was the biggest battleship ever made at the time because it had absolutely massive fucking guns. So let's go ahead and just learn about it.
Just after 2 p.m., the effects of at least 15 bomb and torpedo hits have reduced the mightiest battleship ever built to a sinking hulk.
You know, looking back on it, it all makes sense. Become a world power, defeat the Russians, invade all your neighbors, get pummeled to death by a Western country's air power because they sank all your carriers. I didn't think it would end up this way. Although looking back at it, some mistakes were probably made. Russians in 1905, Japan had hit its stride in being a world power with the effectiveness of and the commitment to their navy. Over the next 30 years, the Japanese would continue to build this branch up and use it to conquer more territory.
What's interesting here, and the common theme that we see throughout history, the success of an empire, or at least for the last 300 or so years, the success of empires, or world-dominating powers. The Navy. The British dominated the world for centuries. For a good at least arguably a good couple centuries, I would say that the British dominated the world scene. Absolutely massive navy. America, currently still the strongest navy in the world, has been since the end of World War II, I would say. Arguably Britain still was pretty strong by the end of World War II, but they had kind of used a lot of their money during World War II, whereas the United States was stronger than ever after the end of World War II because they did not get bombed. Japan became an emerging power as it developed its navy. Became a not a superpower, a global power by around World War I, after they defeated the Russians, I would say. I would say after World War I, when they really started to take over the Pacific. Yeah, it's just interesting theme.
Territory increased their prowess on the world stage. However, this was not easy for the small island nation, that many times found itself lacking the quantity of resources needed to create the number of ships needed to stay competitive. Fast forward to 1937. Japan, being very aware of this problem, decides to go with a quality over quantity strategy for their fleets, to be able to stand up to the American naval production abilities, who they foresaw war with in the future. This was accomplished by creating a new class of ships that would become the largest ever created, the Yamato class, which they found themselves free to do after letting their signature on the London Naval Treaty expire, and began carrying out in secret plans to build the Yamato and her sister ship, Musashi. And this secrecy went to a great extent. Designers' drawings were locked away at the end of the workday, construction yards had large barriers built around them to mask the view from potential spies.
Yeah, but does the quality really, when we think of quality over quantity, right? That's a good, reasonable thing to do. But when the quantity is the amount that the United States can produce, that's much of a streamlined production system where the entire population's economy is now focused on the war effort. I don't think quality from a smaller nation such as Japan and resource-limited country like Japan is going to be capable of producing quality enough stuff to withstand the sheer quantity that the United States can produce. This is also the same argument I would make for German tanks versus Russian tanks. Sure, Germans are trying to focus on a bit more quality tank build, but the Russians, they've just got so many, they can just keep popping them out. They have the resources and they have the manpower to just keep shitting out tanks, while also they receive partial aid from Lend-Lease. But yeah, that quality helps a bit, but over time, that quantity, if they can just keep up with the quantity, you're still going to lose, in my eyes.
And workers were threatened with execution if they spoke about what they were working on. The result, though, was this gigantic behemoth. commissioned on 16 December 1941, spanning 256 meters at the waterline, and boasting 9 46-centimeter guns, amongst a host of other guns and anti-aircraft guns. I won't list them all on here because lists are boring. Go to Simple History for that. But the armament plant was very impressive and evolved over the life of the ship.
Whoa. He got a problem with Simple History? They're a feud? Well, Simple History may not even know this channel exists. Because Simple History is a big channel and Potential's kind of small. I mean, compared to me, I'm tiny compared to Potential History, but like Potential History compared to Simple History, you know? Ooh.
The Yamato was able to be built carrying such large guns because, unlike the Americans, the Japanese did not have any physical barriers to their ship sizes. All American ships had to be built narrow enough to fit through the Panama Canal, which limited the maximum size of their turrets and guns and how much weight they could carry. So the result was that the Yamato, with its large guns and a hull that could support them, would be able to outrange any US ships in a duel and sink them before the US ships were even able to fire. Seems like a pretty solid plan, right? Well, this is where you get into a big problem. At Midway, the Japanese lost 4 aircraft carriers. And I don't think it can be overstated how bad of a position this put them in. Unlike the glory days of the Russo-Japanese War, airplanes had become a huge factor in naval warfare. By the time of Midway and the Yamato's service life, carrier-based aircraft squadrons could mean death for any type of ship with a well-placed bomb or torpedo, regardless of how powerful the ship was to other ships. And I don't mean to sound like this would be easy for the airplanes. Battleships, the Yamato included, had large anti-aircraft emplacements to deter this, but the fact of the matter is, without a carrier escort or carrier grouping, lone battleships with no air support could quickly become targets, and after Midway, Japan was really coming up short in the carrier department. This issue, along with others I'll mention, is a common theme in Yamato's fairly unimpressive service record for its size. Its first action took place at the Battle of Midway, although the battleship was too far away to take part in the battle before it ended, and returned to Japan.
Screw you guys, I'm going home!
This is going to be a common theme. In mid-August 1942, the ship had to sit out the Battle of Guadalcanal due to lack of ammunition and fuel, and sat in Truk Lagoon until May of 1943, where after that, she ended up in Kure for inspection and repairs, and remained around Japan until returning to Truk the following August, and essentially sat there until October. And right now you're probably thinking, what are the Japanese doing? So far it looks like they built a super ship and are using it as a cruise liner. But along with the aforementioned air cover problem, Yamato's engines consumed a lot of fuel, which limited its movements and combat ability. It's only in December of 1943 that Yamato first really gets into combat. When ferrying troops to the Admiralty Islands, Yamato and her task group were attacked by the American submarine Skate, where she was hit by a torpedo and a 16-foot hole was blown open in the hull, causing the rear turret's upper magazine to flood. And yep, you guessed it, that means it had to go back to the dock for repairs.
Screw you guys, I'm going home!
It was at this time, too, that some of the guns were augmented. In April 1944, Yamato departed for the Philippines, and sort of took part in the Battle of the Philippine Sea, although the only thing of note that it did was accidentally shoot at returning Japanese planes. And then guess what happens after this? Yep, more dock time.
Yay!
Until departing on July 8th, to eventually be present for the Battle of Leyte Gulf as part of the 1st Battleship Division, and was later damaged by a bomb at the Battle of Sheboygan Sea, but was able to get away, unlike her sister ship, Musashi, that was sunk after 17 bomb and 19 torpedo strikes.
Damn.
It is after this, though, that Yamato sees some of her best action as part of Kurita's center force, where it engaged the American close support formation known as Taffy 3. This was the only time Yamato ever engaged surface targets. See, told you planes were the way of the future. And landed a few hits on American ships. However, Yamato was diverted by a spread of torpedoes headed for her, and was unable to rejoin the battle. Yamato then returned with Kurita's force to Bruni, and was folded in as the flagship of the 2nd Fleet after the 1st Battleship Division was dissolved. In November, it saw some minor action in the East China Sea before being dry docked yet again at Kure for repairs and anti-aircraft upgrades. From January to February of 1945, Yamato rejoined a reactivated 1st Battleship Division, then got transferred again to the 1st Carrier Division, making Yamato like that one really flaky friend you had.
Sounds like they just don't have the Japanese Admiralty don't know what the hell they want to do in fighting the United States Navy. It seems as though they're very chaotic. They don't know. Like, there's division among the Admiralty, is what this just seems like is happening. That they don't have a unified plan or goal in how to use the Yamato, and they also don't know how to fight the United States Navy.
in high school. On March 19th, they got caught up in the...
That's what it looks like from someone that, you know, I like learning a little bit about World War II, but it's not my focus.
Curie raid, but sustained only minor damage. Allied forces began the final stage before the invasion of the Japanese home islands on April 1st with the invasion of Okinawa, to which the Japanese Navy responded with Operation Tengo, which was basically a suicide mission to halt the Americans. The basic idea for the Yamato's part was to take a one-way allotment of fuel and a full magazine to Okinawa, where the ship would be beached and act as a large gun emplacement that would fight until destroyed. But due to the Americans decoding Japanese radio messages, the ship and her group were intercepted by an American carrier group, supported by some destroyers. Yamato, learning of this, prepared for a fight. With all crew in their anti-aircraft positions by dawn on April 7th. The force began to be shadowed by 2 seaplanes around 8:30 in the morning, with American Hellcat fighters showing up around 11 to deal with potential Japanese aircraft, of which there were none. A little later at 12:30, all hell broke loose on the Yamato, with just shy of 300 American bomber and torpedo planes descending on the Yamato and her escort ships. After about 10 minutes, 2 bombs had taken out 2 of her anti-aircraft mounts and blown a hole in the deck. A few minutes later, a 3rd bomb destroyed the radar room in one of the 127mm mounts. 5 minutes later, a torpedo struck one of the forward sides as the crew began to be strafed on the ship's deck. Victory is mine! Shortly after this, 3 more torpedoes hit the ship, 1 near the engine room, and 1 near one of the boiler rooms. The 3rd hit is disputed but probable. This attack concluded around 12:47 with the ship listing a few degrees to port, which was counterflooded. The 2nd attack began at 1 from all directions, and due to the large amount of planes, the anti-aircraft gun's effectiveness was cut down just from being overwhelmed. 3 to 4 more torpedoes hit the battleship, damaging a couple of fire rooms. The 2nd attack left Yamato listing around 15 degrees to port.
Yeah, so pretty much what this is saying is ships are pretty much useless unless you also, in the modern day, have the airplanes, the planes, the air superiority to support those ships.
Which even after counterflooding remained at about 10, reducing speed and leaving the main battery unable to fire. The 3rd attack began at 1:40, with 4 bombs hitting the ship's superstructure and another fire room being flooded. At 2:02 p.m., the order to abandon ship was given, and the situation on the ship was chaos. At 3:05, a final group of torpedo bombers attacked Yamato again, causing the ship to capsize. Come on, then! Her large 46cm turrets then fell off into the ocean, which created suction that pulled crewmen in the water down below.
Oh.
After this, one of the bow magazines detonated, in an explosion whose cloud was over 3 miles high and could be seen from about 100 miles away. A little under 300 of her 2,700-man crew were able to be recovered by friendly ships that then withdrew to Japan. In the 4 hours and 14 minutes of the battle, Yamato was hit by at least 11 torpedoes and 6 bombs, capping off a very unextraordinary career for such a legendary battleship. The cultural significance of the Yamato being sunk, though, was huge. Japan took great pride in its navy, and many Japanese citizens felt that as long as the Yamato was around, Japan couldn't fall, and the loss of this ship had a very foreboding message to many people. However, at least in my opinion, the ship was more effort than it was worth. And don't get me wrong, the core concept behind it does make sense, but without the additional arms of the Navy, i.e. carriers and support planes, the thing becomes a large target for enemy planes. And that, along with the large fuel consumption, made it a great propaganda piece that spent most of its time sitting in port, waiting for its moment to come that never would. Thank you to World of War.
Again, potential history is just so good. He, like, pretty much says, like, all of the things that I'm thinking. Like, before I'm about to say it, he starts talking about that point, or, like, I'll say the point, and then, like, literally 2 seconds later, he makes the same point because he's such a big brain. He has big brain. He knows his shit. So I've got nothing here to add on at the end either. Man, he's really good. He does his research. He knows his shit, and he also knows how to edit videos. Very nicely well done. So yeah, I've got nothing to add here. He covered all the points that I would have said or would have wondered about. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Leave a suggestion down below for what you want to see me react to next, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.